These are the REL Subwoofers. We have the T5X, T7X, T9X, and also the older generation T9i in the special red finish. Now the question here is, which one of these is the best one for you and your system? And we'll answer that in this video. But before we go on, if you don't know REL, I find REL to be one of my favorite subwoofers of all time, and here is my reasoning as to why. Number one, I find REL subwoofers to be very easy to set up compared to other subwoofers in the market. One of the reasons being that it has a speak-on connection, essentially allowing you to connect it directly to your amplifier. Yeah. Ever had those situations where your preamplifier or your integrated amplifier doesn't have a subwoofer out? Or doesn't have a pre-out? Well, you don't have to worry about that with REL subwoofers because you can connect it directly to the speaker binding post of your amplifier or integrated amplifier. And that leads me to my second point of why I love REL so much is that it just sounds really good. And you're thinking, wait, subwoofers? They sound better, one sounds better than the other? Well, the quality of the driver, the quality of the amplification, the quality of the build in the cabinetry, just like any speaker design, is the same thing. There's a quality difference and that transmits to a performance difference. And there's really no question to REL's build quality. Everyone knows about how great their build quality and sound is. But then you may be asking, well, how does bass sound any different in terms of quality? Like what am I exactly supposed to hear differently? Well, if you ever experience bad subwoofer with a good subwoofer, bad subwoofers tend to have a little bit more slower bass, sloppy bass, whereas real good subwoofers have tighter bass, fast bass, lightning fast, really good grip, and good tone and texture to it. And you may be thinking, well, this guy's delusional. None of that is scientifically proven. Well, technically speaking, we have very good hearing, more than any microphone in the market can ever do for us. In fact, it was proven by this study from McMaster University that humans can detect 50 milliseconds of difference in the low frequencies compared to 50 millisecond delay in high frequencies. So what that means is that you essentially, as a human being, is more prone to time delay or a little bit of time disalignment in the bass region. And this test was actually replicated by my research team at University of Toronto as well. So basically what this means is that as you and I as human beings, and especially if you're an avid audiophile that is listening for certain things, then definitely you're going to notice a difference in the bass region. I mean, 50 milliseconds, that seems ridiculous of noticing anything, but it is a fact that we are very much sensitive to low frequencies, timing, rhythm, and that's just how we are tuned. That's how we listen. And so, of course, that's going to impact how you listen to music and how you enjoy music. And that's why I like REL. They're fast subwoofers, they're quality subwoofers, their drivers have really good excursion characteristics and sound characteristics, and it has that speak-on connection, which is a little bit controversial because it's not, it's more of an audiophile thing, not actually a technical thing. And the idea here is that not only does it allow you the convenience of connecting it to your integrated amplifier or amplifier, like I mentioned before, but it takes on the entire characteristic of your system, right? Because everything from your DAC, your streamer, DAC, preamplifier is all going into your amplifier section and then powering your speakers. So whatever is powering your speakers, your amplifier, is powering also your subwoofer. So you're taking in the entire, system's characteristics, sound characteristic, and sound, quality. And I found this to be true because it makes the system sound more seamless, meaning you don't feel like it's a separate subwoofer there, like you don't notice the subwoofer until you turn it off. And that's kind of what you want with a subwoofer. You don't want to know that the subwoofer is there. If you're hearing boom, 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 boom from your subwoofer, then you're doing it all wrong. That's not how subwoofers should sound. It should be a seamless crossover, like it's coming from your speakers. That's how seamless it should be. Like it should seem like you don't have a subwoofer in the room, but it's all coming from your speakers. And conventionally speaking, this is actually harder than you think with subwoofers. And if you've set up a subwoofer, I'm sure you're aware. Depending on where you put the subwoofer in your room, either to the side, to the front, or to the back of your room, things change quite quickly and you have to change settings on the subwoofer, and the sound outcome is quite different and drastic. So you need experience, believe it or not, to set up subwoofers properly. Well, REL makes it extremely easy because they're not that sensitive to how you place them. They will sound good regardless. And the third and the most important reason is the price. The price is reasonable. They have price category for each individual scenario in different systems, and we'll talk more about that in this video. But take it from a guy who used to sell high-end speakers in a high-end retail store setting and set up really expensive subwoofers and really expensive systems. Subwoofers can be really expensive, and quality subwoofers will run you big money. And don't get me wrong, they are very much worth it because it will give you really great, sound performance. It changes the sound so drastically to the point you take a really good system to a freaking amazing system. But REL, with their previous TI series, they were already competitive. They were really getting close to the high-end market subwoofers without big money and easy to set up. But with their introduction of the new TX series, which is what we have here today, they really step up the game and has closed that gap even further. Now, I'm not gonna say that they're there yet in terms of like, yeah, you plop this down and yeah, you're gonna have sound that's like rivals a $20,000 subwoofer. Not quite. That's why they also have a higher end lineup. But this lineup, for the majority of us, it's like 95% there, 95% there. And it's so easy to set up, so easy to use, and it sounds just great. So there's that. So those are the reasons why I love REL and I personally use REL, and those are the personal reasons as to why. But let's talk about how these subwoofers all differ, because they all differ. I mean, the T5X, T7X, T9X, aside from their size, also have a little bit of different technology, different drivers in there, and also it's meant for different use, which is not something that's often talked about. So I tested these 3 subwoofers with many different speakers that came in here for the last about 8 months. Long time. And here were my findings, starting with the T5X. Now, T5X is the most affordable and the smallest of the lineup. And you would think, so this is the budget option. This is for the people with the least amount of money. No, not quite. In fact, the T5X outperforms these T7X and the T9X in some regards, and that is speed. And because these speakers are smaller than the T7X and T9X, they don't dig as low, meaning they don't extend as low in terms of bass region. But mind you, all 3 of these do dig low enough. I mean, you don't need all the way down to 20 Hertz unless you listen to pipe organ. Most of the instruments that we listen to in our music passages are already within the frequency of what REL provides, giving you extra extension from what you have already or supplementing it with your speakers. So unless you have a speaker that already has a full extension with no drop off whatsoever, then a subwoofer like REL will elevate your bass performance in your system. Absolutely. So at a quick glance, you may look at the T5X and be like, well, it doesn't extend as low, but that's not a really big factor. It extends low enough, in my opinion, for musical passages for most of us. Sorry, pipe organ players out there. But what's really important and why I find the T5X to be one of the better ones out of the T7X and T9X actually is the speed. You see, T5X is very fast in comparison to other subwoofers in the market, and it's even faster than the T7X and T9X. And while the difference is not huge between the T7X and the T5X, there is quite a bit of a difference between the T5X and T9X in terms of speed. And what does that get you? Well, when you pair it up with speakers like panel speakers like Magnepan or Modern Logan, or speakers that really vibrate at very fast paces that has speed, so you often hear me review a speaker and say this speaker is fast. Well, to complement that fast type of sound, you would want a T5X. You want tight, fast bass, lightning fast. That's the T5X. And it's the best option for Magnepan speakers in my opinion. But you have to also account for your room size as well, because you have to understand it's not infinite output that these subwoofers will have. Also, you have to account if you want 1 or 2 subwoofers, because that will give you more output and more dispersion pattern as well. My recommendation, as always, is to have at least 2 subwoofers in your system for the best possible experience. So with the T5X, it's fast, and that is the major thing, and you would pair the speaker up with mostly bookshelf speakers in this case, or panel speakers that are known to be faster and quicker. So again, bookshelf speakers that has about 50, 60 hertz roll off. Some even go deeper these days, but T5X is where I would stay with bookshelf speakers and panel speakers. So that's what this speaker is for. But you have to also account, remember, for the room size. And for the T5X, I would say small to medium-sized rooms is the best fit. And that makes sense for people who have panel speakers or bookshelf speakers that are relatively small, then you'll be in a small, medium room anyways. That is what I suggest. When it comes to larger rooms, now we're getting into the territory of the T7X and the T9X. Now the benefit of the T7X is that it's the middle child of the T5X and the T9X. And while it digs lower than the T5X, it's slightly slower, but we're talking about like fast subwoofers here. So they're all fast, they're all good. But this is the middle child. So this is the middle compromise, if you so will. So it will go perfectly with mid-sized towers like the candles from KLH that I just reviewed, or speakers that are mid-sized but doesn't have that quite extension or needs help in that extension for the full response in the bass region octaves. So that's what the T7X is for. And of course, it outputs more, meaning it can get louder than the T5X. So if you're in a medium to large size room, see there's an overlap there. So depending on what size room you're in, medium or large, and depending on what speaker you have, that's a choice you have to make. If you have fast bookshelf speakers, then you would go with, even if you're in the middle sized room, T5X in my opinion. But if you have small towers like the candles, then you would go with the T7X in a medium sized room as well. Medium, large size room with tower speakers or a little bit larger bookshelf speakers, I would go with the T7X for extra output and matching that speed. Now, next in line is the T9X, and this is the bigger brother. This is for large size rooms. I would say even medium sized rooms, depending on the speakers you have. Again, it's two plays here. It's your speakers and your room that you have to consider. Now, with the T9X, you would pair it up with something like the Polk R700. And I know I said that you don't really need a subwoofer with the Polk R700, and that still stands. I still don't think you need a subwoofer with that speaker because that's tremendous bass. But if you were to, hypothetically speaking, you're looking at big towers that outputs really tremendous amount of bass, but you want that little bit extra extension into lower region or want to have a little bit more impact for the room filling pressure. Especially if you're in a large room, even big speakers may not fill the room with bass energy and pressure like you would want it. So this is what would help you increase that scale of sound and make that speaker even dig lower and ultimately giving you an ultimate bass performance. So that's what the T9X is for. So again, you see here the size matches. Smaller speakers, T5X in a small medium room, T7X in somewhere between medium to large size rooms with tower speakers, but smallish, slim tower speakers, and the T9X for the ultimate extension with big towers or big speakers that extend down low in large size rooms. So these take care of that. And that's what I love about them because they have an application for each individual speaker. And again, these are all fast subwoofers. It really depends on that little difference that makes a big difference. Because again, we're able to detect very small differences and REL knows this. REL likes to do one thing and one thing only. They don't make electronics, they don't make speakers, they make subwoofers. And they want to make the best subwoofers they can, and that's their art. And that's what I appreciate it because, there's a lot of companies making many different things. And while that's nothing wrong with that, I appreciate a company that is fine-tuning their art to perfection. And their key of perfection is really what makes this company great and make their subwoofer and product great. And it is because of companies like REL that know that these small differences matter, making big changes and getting closer and closer to that high-end, properly set up subwoofer performance for a lower price for the mass, right? And easy to set up for people that just don't have the time or the dedication to set up subwoofers perfectly. So these are really good subwoofers that's easy to set up, really getting close to the high-end price, subwoofers, high performance. So that's why I love them. And when I have them properly set up, they sound really darn close to that, high-end performance. And REL also has higher-end subwoofers, but those require more dedicated, more intensive care in setting it up than these subwoofers. These subwoofers are for more generalized, getting great performance right out of the box, easy to set up. You plug them in and boom, you get the performance for a relatively lower cost. If you want that extra little bit, like the extra 5% or even 10% that we're talking about even REL subwoofers, higher end ones that require more intensive setup. And it depends on the situation, right? So we've seen T5X working better with bookshelf speakers or faster panel speakers than T7X or T9X. So it's not always about the price. It's not always about chasing the bigger subwoofer or bigger output or the lowest extension. It's about the quality of bass and what fits in your situation, in your room with your speakers. And that should be the focus, what complements your speakers, your system the best. So now time for bonus questions. Now one of the questions you may ask is, so are you saying that should I choose T5X if I'm in a small to medium-sized room with bookshelf speakers, even if I have the money to buy the T9X? Yes. In fact, I would get two T5X because that does a better performance. If you can get only one, I would say then I would choose the T7X in this case because you get more output, fast enough for a bookshelf speaker. But if you have a panel speaker, that's a different story. I would still probably go for maybe the T5X because it's the fastest. But again, depending on your room size, I would either choose T5X or T7X. So put it into context. You have to consider your speakers and your room again. Now, the next question you may be asking is, what if I have bookshelf speakers in a large size room? Do I still go with the T5X? And my answer is no. Again, two things to consider, your speakers and your room. First thing here is room. Your size of the room is large. T5X just wouldn't have enough output for a really large size room. I'd say it's more safe to go with T7X or T9X. I mean, if you don't have the output, then what does that matter, right? So you need to have that output. The next, fastest is T7X and T9X, and they're still very fast subwoofers. So you need the output first, and then you consider the speed matching with your speakers. So in this case, T7X or T9X, two of them is my choice. Now, if you're wondering about REL's build quality in terms of the driver design, in terms of how fast it is, how is it so fast, it's made of paper. But anyways, there's more details on it in the description below. I'm really enthusiastic about REL subwoofers because they just sound really great. But lastly, I'll leave you with this. If you are someone that has not loved subwoofers before and you're thinking of trying it, try it. Because REL has 60-day home trial. And so why not at least try it? My suggestion to you is try it. Because I was, believe it or not, someone that didn't use subwoofers and didn't believe, I needed subwoofers. Because one of my audio buddies, I listened to him and he doesn't use subwoofers to this day. And he just doesn't say, we don't need it. We don't need it. And that's fine. That's him. But I never tried it because I listened to my friend. But one day, I set up a subwoofer for my client when I was working, and I heard the difference before and after. And I actually tried a subwoofer in my system, and at the time that was an older REL subwoofer, and it just blew my mind. It was so musical, and it enhanced the system like no other component. So having a really good subwoofer can really benefit your system, so at least just try it. 60-day home trial. This is a great chance. This is a great time to be in hi-fi, especially in subwoofer and speaker market, because you get to try it at your own home without any consequence. So try it. And that's pretty much it. I'll leave you with that thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Peace.